Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about the importance of funerals on scientific publications. Let's begin. This topic today is in connection with my previous video about survivorship bias, which gives to the young aspiring scientists and people who are early in their career in science about the advice they seek in connection to important decisions in their research. What I'm going to talk about today is in very tight connection with the same problems: access to resources, to publications, to funding, to social and intellectual support. So there is one very interesting publication from 2018, Does Science Advance One Funeral at a Time, by Asenley, von Strichen and Zivin. And they basically examined the influence that star scientists have in their own field. When I say star scientists, those are people who are most important names in certain fields, and they focus on life sciences because life sciences are leading in the value of grants and volume of publication produced. And they actually try to figure out the leading names in different areas of life sciences between 1975 and 2003. And they narrow down the names of elite scientists they were about to study. So what they did, they actually studied all those star scientists, or elite scientists as we can call them, had a group of collaborators, which can be seen from their publications, and non-collaborators who were active at the same time in the same field. So what Asenley and colleagues actually studied was what changed to the publication output before and after early death of those star scientists. And what they discovered was really stunning. I just need to mention that this idea or quirk is not new. Actually, this is first name posted by physicist Max Planck. So this is something that scientists know among themselves, that if you are in line with someone who is perceived to be a head scientist in the field, who is not only a star, but someone who is making decisions, what is going to be the subject of research, who is going to be a collaborator, who has access to the funds, and usually those scientists are also editors in certain journals. They are important figures or have membership in prestigious organizations. They have significant funding, and they have also a big volume in publications. But let me first tell you about the results. They actually studied what changed in publication outputs in certain field where some person in question was a leading elite scientist who were receiving all the funding, publishing everything, having breakthrough research. What happened after they died? And in the graph that you're going to see now, and in the publication that I linked below, you can see that after the death of so-called star scientists, the publication output of his closer collaborators, or collaborators in general, actually dropped for 40%. 40% was the downsize of their publication output, but those who were not collaborators, who are outsiders of the field, actually increases their publication output for almost 9%, meaning that those who are outsiders are kind of prohibited to publish, not that somebody actually stopped them from publishing, because they did that control when they coded the data, because they excluded those who were also at the same time editors in several of most important journals in the field, because they didn't want to let that direct personal influence in publication of somebody was in the perception of those outsiders. They were actually afraid to challenge the main attitude or main doctrine which is in that field, meaning that they kind of auto-censor themselves. But what is another interesting thing that Azoulay and colleagues discovered is that within 5 years from the death of a star scientist, those non-collaborators who are finally allowed to publish what they think, and this is usually a novel thing, or it is challenging the consensus in the field, actually sometimes succeeded in complete takeover the field and completely shake the publication output of previous collaborators. There is also another effect or phenomena that previous collaborators actually kept keeping intellectual, social access to the funding and to the resources to the outsiders, keeping in a way the position of late head of lab they were working in. I have to add here several other important things. For example, if you are a name in the science, you control many things. For example, if you have a lab, you have a lot of younger scientists who are working in your team, like master degree students, PhD students, who are actually workhorses of the machine. And if you have more than one lab, you have amazing publication output which is simply not possible for one person. For example, if I work on my own and I have, let's say, a colleague which is in the same area like I am, but we are fellows, I don't have students, my output would be decimated in comparison to someone who have, let's say, at least 2 PhD students or 5 or 10. And those people who are objectively so productive are actually riding the already developed system, which is pyramidal, of a lot of younger people who are doing the hard work, and they're actually contributing, giving the name and the conditions, they're leading laboratory, but you simply cannot compare yourself with somebody like this. And there is no way that we are equal. For example, if you're working in the less developed country, you don't even have money to pay for publication, not alone to publish in open access. This is very expensive. For example, in many underdeveloped countries, your salary is not enough to cover the publication, so you are simply denied the possibility that your research is visible, no matter how important it is. And that the fact that newcomers or outsiders can completely turn everything on head is the way how innovations happens. Because I'm coming from signal analysis in engineering, I know that Fourier could not even publish his discovery how you can analyze the signal by dividing it on components, because Laplace, who was then in the Royal Academy of Science in France, was against that idea and he wouldn't let him publish that. And it lasted 25 years. When Laplace died, Fourier could publish, and today everyone is using that methodology in signal analysis. Then there is another famous example of this. Although they were both star scientists. Ramon y Cajal was the father of neuroscience. He was a famous Spanish scientist who actually at the time have completely different idea how we dream and what are the physiological processes behind that. But at that time, Freud was so famous, and even people in Spain who were active in psychiatry and physiology opted to believe Freud and not Ramon y Cajal. 50 years later, we know from his notes, which are recently discovered, that he was actually right, that what he was writing about dreams were completely more realistic representation, description, and theory about the process of dreaming. For example, when I realized who could not become the head of department when I got my PhD, I realized that those people are all at some point in their careers perceived as someone not good enough, but many of them, let's say, left country, and 3 of them who were not good enough to be head of department in small country had developed the huge laboratories and become big names in life sciences in US. So sometimes this is a not bad thing that happened to you. If you're not good enough to be the lead in a small surrounding, and if it is too toxic for you, you can leave and realize your ideas elsewhere when you are perceived much better. So the conclusion is that when a star scientist dies, outsiders often tackle mainstream questions in the field by leveraging new ideas that arise in other domains. I will just have another take on this very phenomenon in research in depression. Actually, I learned that from Bessel van der Kolk, who is the finest scientist researching PTSD and trauma and how we can help those patients. And he actually says the main part of the best grants are going to something which is already confirmed. Because those who are deciding of granting, they don't want to play dice, right? And another thing is that majority of the best funded research, for example in depression, goes to animal studies, where everybody knows that those are experiments that you can easily control. This is completely different with people. And animal model is, yes, model, something which cannot be linearly translated to the human physiology. But again, those star scientists are usually coming from the laboratories which are having animal model research in depression, and someone who is trying to do something completely different and novel, even a low cost, does not have access to a huge grant. So my message to young researchers, when you're deciding about whether your idea is against the mainstream, you can, for example, find what happened in last generation and talk to senior colleagues about whether what you are interested in, somebody already tackled 10 years ago and was not allowed to publish. So maybe you will find a much better opportunity to collaborate with someone who is sharing your ideas, and maybe you will shine after some funeral. Thank you for listening.